So we've got this silver maple tree here. It's a really fast-growing species, and since we're out here in a park, this tree doesn't have any competition from other trees. There's no other, for light or for resources, nutrients, there's no other trees around it, so its root system probably doesn't really get absorbed, or the other trees around it don't absorb the nutrients from it. So like when we go in the forest, look at that, you'll see the saplings that are in there, they have to struggle for every little bit of that resource to get a little bit of light or to get a little bit of nutrients or water from the surrounding area, because they're just surrounded by old trees that have an actual foothold there. But on this tree, I thought this was really interesting because it has these massive limbs here, and you can see how they kind of, instead of coming like up a little bit, they actually come out more. So these areas here have a lot of what we call compression figure, whereas like the grain is actually getting crushed in here. And you can actually see it in the bark. You can kind of see how the bark pattern underneath here is actually distorted compared to like the straight grain area here. You can see how it kind of ripples a little bit. So that'll give you some compression figure, which is basically the same thing as curly figure in a board. If you see the grain kind of undulating through the board. And one place you can really see it is down here on the buttress. You can see how the bark actually has those curls in it. So you can imagine if you were to cut a flat plane out of here, that's what it'd be like in the board. Because in the curly board, the grain's actually coming in and out of the surface of the board. And all you're doing is taking a slice off the top and flattening that. So you can look at a tree and you can tell, like, if I were to cut this into like boards, for instance, you can kind of get an idea of what kind of figure is going to be inside the board. And then obviously, like crotch figure, you're going to get that anytime you have a limb coming off of the trunk.
And what about the, what is it called, bark pocket?
Like a bark inclusion?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we can look at, we'll probably see some of those, but that's like basically as the tree is growing, like right here, if the tree were to come over and fold in on itself and completely cover this in, this bark would be inside the tree. That's the bark inclusion.
Very cool.
This is the standard like maple leaf shape. It has like 3 big lobes. On the silver maple, these 2 lobes here, they kind of cut in further.
Okay.
But the silver maple comes from the back of the leaf. If you can look up at the leaves, you can kind of see they have like a silver kind of
sheen thing.
Yeah, on the back side. That's where the name comes from. So in a tree, there's a living part, and then there's actually like the dead part. The hardwood is the part that's dead. So if you use like walnut, on walnut you have like the dark brown kind of color to it, and then on the edges you'll have the white strips or whatever. That's the sapwood. That sapwood was the part that was living on the tree. So if you look on here, you can actually see this is the part that's living. This is the sapwood. And when this was struck by lightning, the whole tree was split, and the hardwood stayed where it was, and the sapwood kept growing around. So it's trying to include this. It's trying to close back up on itself and heal. Yeah, and the other side too, if you come around to this side, you can see that it was actually struck, so it actually split. It got so hot. So what probably happened is that the water in the heartwood vaporized and expanded and pushed the whole sapwood out, splitting it on both sides.
Wow.
And now with the sapwood split, it's trying to grow back around itself.
That is amazing.
But cherry trees are really easy to identify because they look like this. It almost looks like a pine from looking at it from afar, but it's actually cherry. It's like a black kind of look to it, or dark brown almost, gray maybe. So you can see as it gets older, you can see like the young bark is like really smooth like this.
Yeah.
So that tree we walked by earlier, right here, see this one is like smooth bark all the way up because it's still pretty young.
Yeah.
But down here it's starting to develop a lot more of a coarse bark texture because it's starting to get more mature. But they're pretty easy to identify, and they're everywhere here. Lots of cherry. When you're looking for a burr, you're looking for like really odd kind of shaped growth on the tree. And this is like the early point of it. And another indicator of a burl is a bunch of little limbs coming out that don't actually do anything, they just die off. And the burl is just kind of like unguided growth of the tree. It's all like the grain's all growing all kinds of different directions, which gives you a really awesome pattern. But it's pretty rare, but not as rare as you think. Although it was kind of hard for us to find this one. Usually they're a little more common, but the bigger ones are going to be more expensive because they're just bigger, because most of the time you just find little small ones like this probably won't be that big, and they're kind of goofy to mill up because they're all kinds of weird shapes. So to get something that's like square, with like a box out of it, you need a pretty decent sized burl, unless you want to glue up a bunch of seams. But yeah, just walking around you find something like this, and you kind of know there's something going on there.
So what makes all the branches die off?
because there's not
burl
enough. There's
kills
not enough
it.
nutrients there. There's not enough way for the, I guess, for the nutrients in the water to actually get out to the leaves and the limbs, and it just keeps sprouting new limbs trying to grow, but it doesn't actually have the ability to grow from that point. But yeah, I'll show you when we get back with the it's on a tree and just like cut off, so you can see the bark still on it. So this is a silver maple, and this is a burl on it. So you can kind of get an actual idea of what it would look like on a tree. This is missing the bark, but it'd be just like this one here is a piece of cherry. So this one you can see where it was on the tree. You just walk up to the tree, it looks like some kind of like weird bark kind of thing going on. On the inside, you get the actual burl figure, and here's a slice of one that I cut up as well and put some mineral spirits on, so you can get an idea of the actual figure. There's a lot of stuff going on in there. There really isn't a grain direction. Things are going all over the place, but it's some really, really cool piece of wood though.
So whenever you cut this up or mill up this log, you're going to cut the burl off first with like a chainsaw?
I don't know. So you can leave it attached, and it could be an interesting feature of like a live edge table with this kind of weird burl extension to it. I don't know how practical that would be, but it'd be pretty cool looking. I don't know yet, but we'll see. This one, I had to cut this side off. Someone had already started cutting into it, and I was trying to get it on my trailer, so I had to cut the rest of it off to actually get it on the trailer to get it to fit. So maybe I'll cut it off because I already cut into it, but we'll see.
So is this kind of an indication of what it's going to look like?
Not really with burl. If we look at, let's look at the log over there real quick. I'll show you what curl would look like on the actual surface of the tree. So on this log here, I wanted to show you specifically because you actually can see some curl. Have you heard of quilting figure before?
Yeah.
So quilting is just this little like, I don't know, bump that comes off the top here, or off the board. So if you imagine cutting through this, you have grain kind of coming up in all directions to create that kind of like circle pattern you see with quilting.
You don't make the indents in them though.
Too lazy.
Oh. I mean, but it works fine, huh?
Yeah, it works
Enough
fine.
airflow?
I don't have a problem with sticker stains, so it's not that big of a concern. But yeah, you could run either like a cove in here or some kind of thing, so you have less contact surface with the boards themselves. But that's a lot more work. It's enough work making these things to begin with,
Yeah.
and then to add something else to it, that's even more work.
Yeah. So how long do you actually have to let them dry?
It depends on how thick they're cut to. So these, and where I dry them. So if it's just drying out here in the yard, these will probably take about 1.5 years or so, at about 2.5 inches thick. The thicker stuff might take a little longer, maybe 24 months to 30 months or so for something like this 12 quarter. And I have a piece of 16 quarter down here, which should probably take at least 2 years.